Hey guys, just a quick note. Ed's microphone had some issues this week and his track has a few pops and hisses and hot spots when he talks, but it's not that big of a deal. The good news is the microphone has been interrogated and the problem has been fixed. On this episode, we talk with Rex de Koning and Johanna de Koning Shayage from New Counseling Service about mental health in Thailand.
So if you'd like to learn more about why the mental health profession is starting to gain acceptance in Thailand, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee crap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who followed a friend to Thailand in 2001 and decided to stay to avoid the annual running of the Moose Festival, which is terrifying.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I met Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 19 years ago, fell in love with the weird, wonderful world of self-medication in Thailand, and never left.
Self-medication.
Before we start, a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. For more info on how you can become a patron, just head to the support page on BangkokPodcast.com. And of course, one of the cool things our patrons get is an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we talk about current events in Thailand and whatever else comes into our minds. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about self-medicating when you're sick and some of the surprisingly strong medicines that are legally available over the counter in Thailand, as well as the strange pretty subculture, which is in the news lately because of the death of a young pretty who served drinks at a party.
Yeah, that's a weird subculture, man. It's one more element of Thailand that I just need to learn more about.
Yeah, maybe one of these days we'll get a pretty to come on the show and be our guest.
That would be really interesting. Yeah. Gears turning.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right, well, before we jump into it, we have to mention that someone posted a really cool post on the community tab on our Patreon page. Our buddy Cody, who's one of our patrons, he and a few friends were in town recently, and he just listened to our Hospital Stories episode from a few weeks back, and he shared his experience of going to Burmangrad Hospital, seeing a doctor, getting a bunch of x-rays and some medicine to fix him up, all for a grand total of 6,000 baht.
Nice.
Yeah, and he said, quote, going to see a specialist in the same day, getting x-rays, having them read, then getting meds would have cost over $1,200 in the USA, which is about 35,000 baht. And he finished his post by saying, when I go to the doctor in Alaska, I have to make an appointment in advance, show up 15 minutes before my appointment or they get angry, then wait for 45 minutes after my appointment time before seeing a doctor that I feel provides worse care than the ones in Thailand. For a simple, short visit with a general doctor, I pay about 245 bucks just to get in the door. I feel a lot more confident in Thai medical care than U.S. medical care, which is really interesting.
Well, there you go. I mean, that roughly fits with what we said. So in that show, we basically said the Thai medical system isn't perfect. Both you and I have had both good and bad experiences.
Yeah.
But in general, especially in Bangkok, we've got a pretty good deal when it comes to medical care.
I think we got it pretty good. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that Cody and his friends were able to enjoy their trip in Bangkok, get the treatment they needed for an affordable price. So good on you. Yeah, nice.
Cool.
Thanks for the feedback, man. All right, well, on this episode, we dive into a serious subject that doesn't get a lot of play, and that is mental health in Thailand. Now, while seeing a therapist in many Western countries is fairly normal, mental health in Thailand has traditionally had kind of a stigma around it, with the general consensus being that only crazy people need therapy. So with that in mind, we are very psyched to be able to sit down with Rex de Koning and Johanna de Koning Shayage, I'm sorry if I said that wrong, from New Counseling Service to talk about their 30-year career as therapists in Thailand and why changing family dynamics, the rush of the 21st century, and shifting attitudes toward Buddhism have led to a wider acceptance of mental health in Thailand, and how more and more people are finding that sitting down to talk to a professional can help them in a great number of ways. So it was really cool to sit down with these guys. I learned a lot, and here is my conversation with Rex and Johanna. Well, Rex and Johanna, welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. It's very nice to have you on. I managed to get up here in a light rain to your lovely offices on a lovely soy, which is very quiet. It's something I'm not used to because I live in Thonburi, so the only things I hear is traffic. but there's lots of birds and frogs up here, which I love. But thank you for coming on and welcome to the show.
You're welcome.
Can you tell me a little bit about your business and how long you've been here and why you chose Thailand of all places?
Yeah, we have started this small business in 2001. But before that, we were living in Thailand and working with refugees first, refugees from Laos. And we work in the medical field in a refugee camp. But then we discovered that in the Thai villages, in the village that we lived in the northeast, there was a lot of need among families for better mental health. We noticed because we lived among the Thai people in the village. And that drove us to kind of have a motivation to come back to Thailand with more education and to begin counseling service. We could there was an opening in 2001 for us because the old system, it was not a system, an older organization that was here mostly for foreigners was closing down because they couldn't manage it anymore. So they had to close down. That's why we opened up with new counseling service. The previous one was called Community Services Bangkok.
Okay.
And
I see.
so in 2001, we could open with us because that one just got closed.
Right time, right place.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
One of our past guests had recommended you as someone to talk to because for a long time, I've been wanting to do a show on mental health in Thailand. And I've been gone a long time from my home country, from Canada. So I don't really remember much about the landscape of how it was in terms of mental health. And even if I did, it's probably changed a lot. But from what I can tell in Thailand, mental health is something that's not really big here. It's not discussed. It's not commonly understood. Is that a correct assumption?
That's correct. It's often translated as you have to get crazy and then you need help and you see a doctor for that. And in between that, before getting crazy, there is nothing else, or it used to be nothing else. That's how it was.
Really? Okay, so it's either you're like normal or crazy.
Yes.
And there's no in between.
That was the concept or the perception previously. That is slowly changing.
So how has the landscape of how people understand mental health in Thailand changed between when you opened and now? Have you noticed a sort of a broader acceptance, a broader understanding, or is it just really slow to change and evolve?
It is very slow. When we came here in the beginning, I think there were 300 psychiatrists in the whole country.
Oh, wow.
So not enough. We started a new counseling service. In the beginning, we hardly had Thai. But that has gradually changed, especially after the tsunami in 2004.
Oh, really?
We had a big tsunami, of course, an enormous trauma. And after that, the Thai people started to see that mental health is something that can help people. So a lot of things have changed after that also because more and more foreigners wanted suddenly to become counselors in Bangkok. So after the tsunami, we got also more foreign counselors. And I think bit by bit, people got to know more about counseling and how it can help. I think also one of the factors that is also adding to more questions about mental health is the fact that family systems start to change, and also Buddhism is changing. So in the past, people would go to the monk or to the fortune teller,
right,
to discuss things, and that gave them a certain support. And within the family, you would discuss a lot of things. And these things are breaking down. So especially in Bangkok, people are lonely, people are stressed. The work is enormous, the load. And just as our countries in the West, a lot of people get burnt out and get depressed because it's hard to survive.
Really?
And it's hard to make social connections that are deeper than only it's nice weather and the food is good.
That's really fascinating because I think a lot of times foreigners, and I'm guilty of this myself, come to Thailand and say like, oh, Thailand doesn't have this thing that my country has. So it's easy to say, oh, Thailand doesn't have a lot of psychiatrists or psychologists or counselors like my country has. But the structure's do exist. They have existed. It's just a different form. It's the monks. It's the very tight family structure that maybe, like, our countries aren't really known for. So that infrastructure is there, but it's just a different form. But now it's changing. In terms of the family, how is the family structure changing, and how is that leading towards the desire for more counseling services?
Urbanization is a big factor because Bangkok has been growing over the years from maybe 6 million to now probably 16 to 20 million people. So lots of workforce people in the age between 20 and 40, 45, moving to the city, to Bangkok, to find work, to have work here. But their children are living in the provinces with the grandparents.
That's
alone.
very common, and it must be really hard.
Yes, that must be very hard, and it is hard. So they are, the parents who are working in Bangkok are, of course, stressed because they have to provide for the family back home, for their parents and their children, as well as for themselves living in an expensive city like Bangkok. It's getting more and more expensive.
Yeah, sure is.
So that's another stress for people. And then making ends meet together is a challenge. Keeping relationships up with their parents, with their spouses, partners, is also difficult. There are lots of challenges.
I think also modern life has different demands. So families that are living in Bangkok, parents often expect a lot from their children. That starts already when they are born. They need to be the best in school, grade A. They need to have a terrific education in order to get a tremendous good job, and especially very well paid.
Yeah.
And this is stressing people out. There are too high expectations, and the family structure from the past, obey your parents only. When they have studied abroad, it doesn't fit completely anymore. So there are a lot of things, kind of like shaking. Foundations that were in the past normal, they are shaking at the moment. And that's why people get distressed.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation too, because previously on shows we've talked about how a younger generation who has been educated overseas is coming back to Thailand and bringing all kinds of new ideas and structures and relationships and thoughts on modern culture. And sort of they have to coexist with the traditionalist beliefs of the older generation that have stayed here. So it's interesting that that's affecting everything from the nightlife to the food to the business and mental health as well. And you mentioned Buddhism is also changing. In what way?
I think many people are kind of disillusioned regarding their faith, because faith is not as strong as a foundation as it used to be in the past. There have been scandals. So a lot of people are kind of disappointed. And I think also because of the modern influx of all the social media, maybe some people do not have that faith anymore that they used to have in the past. I think the new religion is making money and have a lot of stuff. Materialism, in fact.
Right. Well, let's. I want to use sort of a real life example. I'm very lucky in that I'm generally, I think, very well balanced, and I'm able to handle the ups and downs of life pretty well. And one of the things that scares me right now is I have a son who's 4, almost 5, and I'm scared that one day he's going to come to me and say, I have anxiety, or I'm depressed, or something, and I'm going to say, I don't know, just don't be depressed. Like, it's not that hard, which is a ridiculous answer. But what kind of things are Thais who are encountering these new problems and issues? What kind of things can they do, or should they do, or to sort of get to the bottom of it? Someone is stressed or anxious or depressed, and their family doesn't know what to do, and they don't know what to do. What do you do?
I think the first thing is ask for help.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit like promoting our services, but I think that's the first thing. Go to someone who is willing to listen and to talk. It depends a little bit on the issue, of course. Anxiety, what is the root cause of it? So that's what you do in counseling. You look at that. Then, of course, you can learn certain techniques how to deal with anxiety, like focus on your breathing. You have the whole movement of mindfulness nowadays. It's kind of a hype, yoga. But, it has benefits if we have anxiety.
Right.
So it depends a little bit. But if the anxiety is caused by too much work, okay, then you have to look like, how can I balance? If the anxiety is caused by too high expectations from others, but most of the time we do it ourselves, we have very high expectations of self, okay, then we have to talk about it like, okay, how can I lower that? How can I change that? If anxiety is caused by deep fear from childhood issues, okay, then we have to go to childhood issues. So it really depends. There are many, many causes.
It's different for every case.
Yeah, different indeed.
Has Thai culture, being here for so long, you said you've been here since 1996?
Actually, since 86.
1986.
Yes.
How has Thai culture changed or influenced the way that you provide mental health care compared to maybe one of your colleagues who's stayed in Europe or North America?
I think what our benefit is, we know Thai culture more or less from the inside, because we've seen so many people now over the years. And we've also run a program called Marriage Encounter in the past. Right now it's on hold, but that's how we got a very deep insight into how families function, how they work or how they don't work. And that has helped us to get an idea on how things are at the present. But what needs to be done about it is probably education is a big thing. Education on how to live life as a family, how to connect with each other, because many parents are struggling to connect with their children, especially when they're teenagers. They don't know how to do that. And they also, it seems that they don't make an effort because there's not much talk about it. There's not much education about that.
Right.
So I feel there is more education needed on how to establish family life and how to have certain rules and certain boundaries in the family.
Is it changing, and why? Are there courses offered in universities? Are they becoming more popular? Is it being talked about on TV or radio and the internet more and more these days? Where is it changing?
If you talk about counseling, yes, that is changing, or mental health in general. The government is more on top of it, so there are indeed more talk shows about it. The mental health department is very active now in trying to make people aware of certain mental illnesses. It started with really psychiatric illnesses, but now they also add depression, anxiety, and that kind of things. So in that sense, there is more awareness. There are now several universities that are offering counseling courses or counseling education to become a counselor, which I think 20 years ago, hardly. There was psychology, but that was more research and kind of like scientific.
Okay.
Whereas now there is really a counseling training, which means, okay, you learn to have the therapeutic approach when you talk with people. So yeah, that is really, that has changed a lot, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. And also psychiatrists, they are less medical oriented. They educate themselves in talk therapy. Whereas in the past, you always got your back with medicines.
Right. Well, that's funny you say that, because that's something that I complain about a lot too, is you go to the hospital, oh, I've got a cough. Here's a bag of medicine, or just throw drugs at the problem and hope it solves itself. And you offer services in Thai and English? Is that right?
Yes, in Thai and English, yeah.
Right.
And we have Chinese as well, and one Japanese counselor.
Okay. I know you can't get into specifics, but what do you talk about most often with your clients?
We call them clients, though. Yeah, not
Okay.
patients, but clients.
Okay.
It's really, you see a lot of changes during the years. Depression is a big one. At the moment, it's anxiety. A lot of people feel anxiety. So it's kind of like all over the place. A few years ago, it was a lot of depression. Sometimes eating disorders, that's also a big problem.
Oh, yeah.
And that can be bulimia or the opposite, anorexia. Obsessive-compulsive behavior is also often the case. We have had a period where several people had the spectrum of autism. And nowadays also very common is kids with ADHD and ADD.
Right.
So that seems to be now a big problem among children.
Is there any reason for that, or is it just being diagnosed more finely, more acutely? It seems like, especially in countries like America, just everyone's got ADHD, everyone's on Ritalin, and it's the conspiracy is that the drug companies are pushing their drugs when they're actually not needed. Is there an actual rise in these sort of ADHD things?
I'm not a researcher, so I can't say for sure. But I think when certain illnesses kind of like become known, they tend to grow. Mm-hmm. So yes, I think that there are certain, I call that waves in illnesses. And then suddenly everybody has it. We have had the bipolar wave. We have had the borderline wave.
Really?
Yeah. And I think regarding mental health, it is often very difficult to know what is the diagnosis. It is difficult, and often a lot of things are kind of overlapping or relating. So it is hard to find the root cause of things. So nowadays, with all the children having ADD and ADHD, I'm sometimes wondering whether it does not have its root cause in families, how we raise our children, how we have a structure in our family, how much available are mom and dad next to their job, because it's often very challenging. And at least in the West, moms don't set boundaries anymore because they feel guilty not seeing their child all day long. And in the evening, they are tired, so sometimes they let it go. And that could be one of the reasons why kids go a little bit more wild. Could be. I'm wondering about it. Because sometimes I think if we would have more rules, more structure, more clarity for kids, maybe there could be a little less of this. But, as I say, I'm not a researcher, so I've never done a PhD about this.
And there's no one-size-fits-all solution, right?
No.
Yeah.
And some kids indeed do need Ritalin or Concerta. But some kids get it too quick, according to my opinion.
Well, yeah, I can identify. When I was a kid, I was 11, 12, 13 years old. I was a nightmare, raised by a single mom. And there was a couple of years there where she was really worried that I would go off into like unrecoverable territory. But I eventually just kind of grew out of it. So as we're wrapping up here, do you find that a lot of your clients just really want someone to talk to? That there's no one that they can just kind of sit down and say, here's what's bothering me? Or is there a lot of people that have actual diagnosable conditions?
There are a lot of people who need to talk. And so that's why they often sign up. Some even because they're lonely, they have nobody to talk to, and then they find a counselor that they can talk to. Some people have gotten labels from mental health professionals, like that they have ADHD or that they have Asperger-related behavior, and they think they are what they have. They almost identify with the disease and they become ADHD sufferers. But at the same time, we believe that it's not always good to just put a label on it and then you can deal with it, because you have to look at the root causes and below the surface and the family structure and everything else that makes this person who he or she is. So you have to look a little bit deeper.
Also, a label can be good, but my question is always, okay, now you know what you have. What are you going to do with it?
Right.
Like, if you have diabetes, that's an awful illness. But you can make a choice. You can lay all day in bed feeling pity for yourself with diabetes, or you can get on your feet and say, I have diabetes, and I learn how to live with it. So it's with physical illness, the same as with mental issues that we have.
All right, well, last question is a two-part question. Can you tell me what the difference is between a psychiatrist and a psychologist and a counselor? Is there a difference? I don't know.
A psychiatrist is a doctor who has been trained to be a general physician first. He's a doctor and has completed the complete doctor training.
Okay.
After that, has done an additional training for probably 4 years to become a psychiatrist, to look into the soul and to look into diseases that have to do with the soul.
Not only the soul, also chemical imbalance, why we have psychiatric problems like schizophrenia, paranoia sometimes, depression. Depression is really an issue that could be psychiatry, could be other issues. Borderliner, same thing. So a psychiatrist is medical schooled and can give medication. A psychology is more scientific schooled and will do kind of tests with people, look, for instance, at EQ, IQ, have the results, and then see like, okay, does this person need a special treatment? Sometimes they indeed will do talk therapy, but then they often have a training above their psychology. So they have psychology and then they have a 2 years training in clinical psychology, which means therapy.
Okay.
And then they learn how to give counseling, so to say.
So there is a very definitive difference. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then a counselor has counseling training for, learning to know the people, see what the problems are, and how can we, through talk and therapy, help them to improve.
Second part of my question, can I still use the word shrink, or is that not cool anymore?
In the international world, you can still use the word shrink, but it has a negative connotation.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
So you can still use the word. In America, probably it's a very common word, but it has a negative connotation because people don't like shrinks and they think it's bad to be going to the shrink.
Right. That's part of the taboo of it.
Right.
And that could become with counselors as well. And now we see coaches. And 15 years ago, we had mentors. So, hey,
Right.
we keep going.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing what the next colloquialism is going
Because
to
a coach feels, the word coach feels a little bit safer than the word counselor. So now we see more and more coaches coming up. And
Right.
Sometimes they call themselves life coach, career coach. But yeah, actually counselors do similar things. They go a little bit deeper, a little bit further, a bit more into the history of people, where coaches do more day-to-day
Okay.
or future career development. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll come right back around and start with guru again and go from there.
Who knows? Yeah.
Well, Rex and Johanna, thank you so much for chatting. It was really interesting. It's I think your specialization, much like Bangkok, is constantly evolving and changing and speeding up. So you got to stay on your toes to help people. So thank you for the work you're doing, because I know I have some friends who are depressed, who are anxious, they value the services of counselors. So here's hoping that it stops becoming such a taboo issue and that people can seek the help they need. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, and people should realize, counseling is just a period of time. It's not a lifelong thing.
Right.
If a counselor does her job after a period of time, you feel okay and you go further on your own wings.
Right. Cool. All right. Thanks very much.
I'm really glad we got around to doing this topic, because it's something that I think needs to be talked about more in Thailand. As you discovered in the interview, one of the problems is that in Thai culture, Thai people often just don't have anyone to talk to about personal problems or mental health issues. And,
right.
And, there's in the past, there was simply nowhere to go. And so now it's fantastic that psychology and therapy is just becoming more accepted.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sensitive things too, like sexuality or family problems or something like that there might be like a Thai cultural stigma around that you might not be comfortable sort of bringing out into the open. You might want to talk to someone who can keep it confidential. And there's Western influences, and as we talked about, the changing role of religion and the community and stuff like that. So it was very, very interesting talking with them. And thanks a lot for coming on, guys. It was really cool to sit down. I learned a lot. And maybe we'll have them back on again to talk about some more specific issues, because I know a lot of people who have struggled with issues, and when they learned that we were going to be doing something like this, they're like, oh yeah, you got to do that. That's really interesting. So
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people out there who would benefit from something like this, or who are looking for information about this topic. So we hope they listen and learn.
Well, I just got to say, it just sounds like good news that it's becoming more accepted. So it looks like there's reason for optimism.
True that. All right, well, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us surprises the other with a particular aspect of life in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as just part of life in Bangkok that we cannot change and must live with. And this week, I think you have something for me, man.
Okay, I got a weird one for you tonight, Greg. I happened to be talking today with one of my students who is an exchange student from France. And she is new to Thailand, and so she had a million questions about Thai people and Thai culture, and she's just trying to get her head around all the stuff that we talk about all the time on the podcast, right? Mm-hmm. We just ended up talking about a bunch of stuff about Thai culture, and I started talking about relationships in Thailand, and I got a question for you.
Okay.
So both of us are married now, but in the past we've dated a few different Thai women. And there's a certain cliche about Thai women that I think is true. And assuming that you also think it's true, I want to know if you like it or not. Is it like, for some guys, it might be a pro. I don't know. But here it is. Here's what I want to ask you about this.
There's no way this could possibly be a landmine. Okay, go ahead.
So here's kind of the standard take on Thai women. The standard take on Thai women is that they don't like to talk stuff over. They don't like to discuss problems or issues. And I personally have found this to be true. So to me, it's an odd thing because I feel that back home in the States, the cliche is that women always want to talk about your relationship and guys don't want to.
Interesting.
So I'm just curious. Love, loathe, live with, or maybe you don't even think it's true. What do you think?
I would agree with that. I never really thought of it before, but looking back, I've never really had any. We just sit down and discuss, like what direction we're heading in, or we need to talk about us. We need to share more. No, I've never had any conversations like that.
Right, Thai girls don't do that. Like Thai girls don't do that.
No, and I did have a couple of conversations like that with Farang girls back in Canada, but I never really had anything like that here with Thai girls. Now that I think of it, yeah. And
is that a good thing? So it might be a good thing. Maybe you love it.
I think I like it. I love it because I don't know. Maybe this is an interesting one to tag onto the end of this mental health episode because I think that's what it's all about: is sitting down and talking through your problems. But I've been lucky in that I've been in relationships where there have never really been a lot of problems, so there's not really a lot to talk about.
That's a plus.
That being said, there have been some issues where it was like, okay, we need to figure this out, like we argue before bed or something like that, but minor things. But there's never been any conversations like, okay, we need to sit down and come up with a 5-year plan, and I'm having some problems, relating to your intimacy or whatever, No, I've never done anything like that, and I got to say, I don't really want to. I'm just sort of happy to let things go along as they are. So.
Well, that's an honest answer. I think I'm like kind of a tweener. I'm kind of somewhere in between on this because I have been in a situation where I've wanted to talk about something or something's bothering me, and they just don't want to talk about it. And so I don't know. I guess I'm a tweener. I guess obviously I'm going to have to go live with because I stayed here and I'm married to a Thai woman. But I definitely don't love it. Like I just feel like there's something missing. It's like I think occasionally you should be talking about your relationship. Call me crazy. I just think you should.
Yeah. Okay. You raised some good points, and I'm going to match you on this. I go with live with because there have been times, and there are times with my wife even that I want to like maybe this is something we should talk about, but I know that it's probably just we're gonna start, and then it's not going to reach a resolution, and we're just going to like peter off into nowhere, and it's not going to be worth talking about, so we just never talk about it. So maybe I wish that we did talk a little bit more, but
yeah, it's tough. Maybe,
overall, I'm kind of glad that I don't have to.
You don't have to go through it, right? You're such a guy. That's such a guy thing. But the bottom line is it might be connected to the mental health issue. It's like the bottom line is I think in Thai culture there's just people don't talk about how they feel too much. They just don't. I
guess so. I'm not really smart enough to have an opinion on this. Maybe I just haven't had enough relationships. I'm more about quality over quantity, Ed.
Apparently. All right. Okay. So after this super deep episode of the Bangkok podcast, I'd like to give a special thanks to all of our lovely patrons. As you know, we don't run ads. We don't have sponsors. So we really, really do appreciate the support we get from our patrons. If you want to learn more, just head to bangkokpodcast.com/support. And if you want to get in touch with us, it's easy. Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We are very polite, and if you write, we will answer.
Yeah, and you can also find each episode on YouTube now, and you can also follow us online, where we post each episode and carry on conversations with our listeners. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, folks, and we'll see you back here next week.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a 1-year teaching contract 19 years ago, fell in love with waiting. Shit, I just swallowed that line.